Unfiltered. I'm Doc C. I'm here with my man Derek Kenny, and we are talking about the latest coming out of the boxing world and, of course, the streaming media entertainment world, and that's the fight between Mike Tyson and Jake Paul. Derek, what did you think of this fight, man? There were a lot of mixed feelings and mixed reactions about the fight last night that streamed on Netflix just before midnight on November 15th.
I would say it was great to be excited about boxing again. So that's the good thing. I was excited about this for quite some time. It was free if you already have your Netflix subscription. So the price point was
Yeah.
amazing. So kudos to Netflix for having this. I believe they're supposed to have around 120 million viewers, which is a huge deal. And it's the first time I believe that there's this type of boxing event on a streaming platform. So that was great. Had all the hype of the old school heavyweight boxing bouts of yesteryears, years gone by. Even had a name from years gone by, Mike Tyson, who who looked like he's from years gone by. So those are some of the some of the good things. Now I can talk about some of the bad things because my Netflix was buffering. Yeah, but it was pretty
Really?
interesting. Pretty interesting. What do you think about it, Colin? What did you think? What were your
All right.
takeaways?
Well, there are a few things that when you talk about the hype, that was one of the biggest things leading up to this fight was the hype going into this bout that was going to rake in tons of cash for Netflix. But of course, it was supposed to happen earlier this year, but then it was canceled because of supposed health issues that Tyson was dealing with. And then throughout the year, we learned that he might have had ulcers, that he might have had other issues going on. But at the same time, they were showing him in the ring with his sparring partner, lighting it up, looking at some of the fast reflexes that we remember Mike Tyson having from
Yeah,
back in his prime,
yeah,
just having a lot of people wondering, is this guy really in his late 50s? Is this guy an aging
yeah.
quinquagenarian, or does he still have some of those lightning fast reflexes that he had when he was in his 20s? Well, the thing was, with those quick clips that he was working out with his sparring partner, we saw some of those glimpses of that. But
Mhm.
remember, those were only flashes of a few seconds here and there. And that's what showed up in the ring, where we saw glimpses and maybe a second or two of some of those fast reflexes. But throughout the fight, that was pretty largely absent. And we saw an aging Mike Tyson, someone who had probably something beyond ring rust from what it seemed like. We do know that he's a heavy cannabis user now. Of course, if you're doing that on a daily basis, it's going to have an effect on performance. And if you're in your late 50s, another thing that's going to have an effect on your performance and just the will and desire. Now,
Yeah.
I have no doubt that he would have liked to win the fight and that he would have liked to knock Jake Paul out, maybe depending on what was in that contract. But it's not the same as if he was trying to win a bona fide title, as if he was really thrust into the boxing zenith of the top boxers in the world or being the top opponent in the world. That strong, that eye of the tiger is not really going to be there, right? Because this was
Hmm.
maybe more of an exhibition match. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
sort of what we saw.
yeah.
Now,
It,
as far as the buffering issues, I didn't really get that so much. I will say I wasn't always attentive throughout the what do you call them? The matches, the boxing bouts before the main event, like the what do you call them? The pre-events, not the main event, but the Serrano Taylor fight and the fight before that. I wasn't always attentive, so maybe my Netflix account buffered during then. But I had no problems watching it during the fight. I thought that Netflix did a good job broadcasting it. I mean, it was what it was. I already had Netflix. So for me, I wasn't upset about any extra money that I needed to pay or any kind of performance or any type of resolution, degradation. To me,
well,
it was fine.
well, I'm
So
glad. I'm glad it was fine for you. Let me give my first
yeah.
rant of this of this series. That was
Yeah. What'd you
horrible.
think?
That was
Horrible.
horrible.
Why?
I
Yeah.
would rather spend $50 on something that works. I could. I mean, when you're watching it and you have guests over, because boxing is an event. This is an event when you invite the guys over. You have some beers. People are drinking. There's wings. There's steak and cheese. You're having a good time. And as the host, the last thing you want to do is look like your TV doesn't work. And so you're sitting there, and then all of a sudden, Michael Irvin is sitting there with his crusty lips talking about whatever he thinks is happening tonight in boxing, looking like a pure, whatever what he likes to do. We know what Michael Irvin likes to do. He likes to do a little a little whatever, and then it freezes. Your TV
Yeah.
freezes. What's going
Yeah. How
on?
long did your TV freeze for? Was it like a
It,
minute or was it just a few seconds or?
uh, it froze for, I would like to say, I would say maybe like 2 or 3 minutes with the Michael Irvin piece. So then it started back again. And then every once in a while, I guess during the other boxing matches, it would stop for a few moments. And then the video quality would degrade a little bit. It gets a little pixely, which is suspect because you have a 4K TV and then you have these big old boxes like the Nintendo 64 resolution out of Netflix. I'm like, come on, man, this is horrible. And then, of course, when we get to the main fight that you really want to watch because you're hoping that Mike Tyson will give at least one swing in there with his horrible. He's a 58-year-old man with 78-year-old legs. His legs look horrible, but I wanted to see it. I didn't want any pausing, and so it paused once. I had to go back and go back in there again. Second time it paused. I think it was around 6. We had to just wait and hope that it starts back again. So we're sitting there looking at the TV like, just hoping it's going to work. Like I felt like a kid watching TV back in the 80s where I might need to go and adjust the antenna on the TV to get something to help to work better. Or when you have a tube TV and hit the side of the TV and make it work. That was horrible. That was Netflix. I'm happy for them. They exceeded expectations in terms of the amount of people and attention that they garnered. They failed for me. Big fail for the buffering.
Oh,
That's not
wow.
acceptable. It's not acceptable. I got the highest speed internet
You're
possible.
not a fan.
I'm not a fan of this. Like I don't. The next time they do this, they need to have assurances that I don't have to worry about buffering. I'm not watching something like this. I'm not going to pay for something like this if it's going to be buffering. So kudos to other streaming platforms that are doing sports well without buffering. Like I think Amazon's been doing well with football. Um, I don't have Paramount or whatever the other thing is that has the football games on different days, whatever. But
Yeah.
Netflix
I
for
think that's
me,
like the game package.
for me this was a failure. I think this is a great exhibition of how powerful Jake Paul is as a marketing content creator. This is a great spectacle that he created. And then the undercard fight was fantastic. So the women's bout,
Yeah, it was interesting at the end
man,
when they asked Tyson like who he wanted to fight next or who he wanted to call out, and then he said Logan. I was like, what? Like, what is going on? I was expecting him to say somebody else, like maybe an aged Lennox Lewis or maybe an aged
yeah.
Evander Holyfield or something like that, or maybe even Roy Jones himself. I don't know, but for him to call out Logan Paul possibly, I was like,
And then,
oh
and then
no, this
Logan
is not
said,
the
I'm
move.
not with
It
Logan
just
said, I'll
seems
knock you
like
out.
yeah,
Like,
it was just kind of a diminutive Tyson that I
yeah,
don't know. I don't know if he was, there's rumors that he takes certain drugs for mood or emotions or
yeah,
depression or things like that. I don't know. It just seemed like it wasn't like the same guy that was there. Every once in a while, you get Tyson who's like fired up and snappy and punchy and,
yeah,
just
yeah,
ready to eat your children. Right. Maybe that's Mike in the old days. And then you've got Mike that's more like just chill, like almost more black pill,
yeah,
fatalist, like,
yeah,
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 nothing matters anymore. I'm just going to go out here, throw some gloves and then throw some hands. And then whatever happens after that, it happens.
hmm
There's no gumption, no motivation, no enthusiasm. So I think we got the latter Mike Tyson last night where it's like, all right, I'm going to make my 20 million. Jake Paul's going to make his 40 million. We'll give the crowd a little something to talk about, and then I'm going to go home with my money. That's sort of what it seemed like because there weren't really that many highlights. Now, I will say Tyson did get in a punch or two, but it almost made me think that, it was something that Jake Paul allowed him to do just
yeah,
for the look of combat, but not
yeah.
really that Jake Paul was really going to get hit very hard or
You
that it was
know,
really a knockout
I,
punch. And so, yeah, I
I
just
will,
felt like, all
I,
right, they could have been a little bit more competitive.
I will say that Jake looked a little scared in the beginning, and I think he should have been scared because Tyson still, upper body wise, Tyson looked, some of his swings looked like they could hurt somebody, but his legs, like
Yeah, he's
because you're used
200.
to,
He's almost 230 pounds. He's
yeah.
almost 230
So
pounds.
he's a big
5'10",
guy,
5'11".
and all the things you
Yeah,
saw, like you talked about in the training, where he's punching the guy, like yeah, the guy standing right there in front of him, 3 inches away, he can rail on him. But if you got to follow somebody around, which I believe is a larger ring, it was like 21 feet by 20 or something. It's a larger ring, so he had more area to cover. You have to do that. Tyson, he has this thing where he like covers a lot of ground very quickly with a hook and a punch and catches up to people. He couldn't do that. He couldn't jump off those legs.
Right.
I don't know. He had a
No.
knee brace on. He looked like if he needed to walk down the street, like if he needed to walk for 16 minutes as opposed to bounce around in a boxing ring for 16 minutes. He couldn't do either, you know. And I think it was his
Right.
legs. And I think hopefully in the weeks to come, you might want to talk about what happened to his conditioning or perhaps what's going on with his legs. Like, did that step on the foot hurt? Because you know during the weigh-in, Jake Paul stepped on his toe, and then Mike Tyson slapped him. You know,
Yeah,
did
but
that?
that slap,
You
to me,
know,
that was like a stage thing. I think that was just
yeah,
to set off some drama and to increase the drama of the
right,
whole fight itself. Like, I had a feeling like something was going to happen at the weigh-in, whether it was going to be a slap or a push or some
yeah,
kind of interruption, right? That just so that people
yeah,
could say, okay, there's some kind of argument or some kind of bad beef between Paul and Tyson. Paul played it off during the
yeah,
weigh-in, kind of just saying that it didn't hurt or anything like that. So we knew like it wasn't like meant to be a serious slap, but just something to help promote the fight. And so I think that's kind of what some of us got caught up in, believe it or not.
yeah. Well, I would say it was again. It was great to have the spectacle and the anticipation of a heavyweight bout, and just have it be a happening. You know, people and bars having Netflix on their screens. Netflix really had an opportunity, and they I think they capitalized in a lot of ways to reach a greater market because people without Netflix probably did get Netflix subscription just for this bout if you didn't have it, you know. And this is all over the world,
Yeah,
you know. This was a
yeah,
worldwide
that's true. It
event.
is global.
That was
Yeah.
amazing, amazing. So kudos to them for that. Two thumbs down for infrastructure. Work on that, Netflix. Fix that, Netflix. And as a matter of fact, if Netflix sponsors us, then we will we will stream on Netflix too. Hey, we'll make sure that it gets for our 120 listeners. We'll be able to know that you know Netflix is fixing their problems. But other than the Tyson bout, which was what it was, there were several other bouts that were pretty good, but not really memorable. But the women's bout,
Serrano and Taylor. That was, I
oh
mean,
boy,
for a pre-match. What is it called, Derek? When it's like it's not the main bout,
the
whatever you call it.
undercard, the undercard, yeah, this is
The
the
undercard.
undercard,
Thank you. That's the
yeah,
word I was looking for. The undercard, right? So that was a big battle between Serrano and Taylor. A lot of people thought that Serrano was robbed from the ruling or the judgment in that fight as well. But that was pretty brutal. I mean, these women were really going at it back and forth, which was pretty crazy. So I thought that was interesting, but not what everybody had paid for Netflix to see, right? So even though that was a good fight, it was pretty combative. I think a lot of people were still left underwhelmed just because of what they didn't see in the Tyson Paul fight. So again, it was something where a lot of people were looking forward to it. A lot of people wanted to see old Mike Tyson come back and do something. But I don't know, a
let's
lot of
let's
hype,
let's
and
have
I don't know if they're
the
going to do it again.
let's have the unpopular conversation about women boxing. So there
Yeah,
was the woman Serrano. She had a big gash on her head, but for many people, other than the big cut on her head from which may or may not have been from the headbutting. The headbutting definitely exacerbated it because you get cuts from boxing, but then it was exacerbated seemingly by the
yeah.
opponent's Taylor's head bumping into or grinding into
Right. You
the
get it
cut.
like on your
Right.
around your
Yeah.
occipital lobe right here, and you're like it's
Yeah.
very
That
thin right
area.
here around your eyebrow.
Yeah.
There's like
Mhm.
skin and then bone right there. So
So what do you
yep.
think about her losing though? She seemed like she was the more active boxer. She seemed to she rocked Taylor a couple of times. So from a point standpoint, the announcers on their cards had Serrano winning easily by 3 or 4 points, in which in
Right.
boxing is a lot.
Yeah.
That's like 3 rounds out of the 10. She basically has 3 more rounds than her opponent. But then Taylor won. She won. The
But
actual
then Taylor won the
referees
fight.
actually won.
Yeah.
But I wonder how much of that is seeing
appearance, the
The
aesthetics
appearance,
of
yeah,
just seeing the blood
right.
coming from her forehead and stuff like that.
Because it
I think that
was,
played into a lot of it. I think optics is
yeah,
huge when it comes to boxing, and I think that some of the judges overlooked the fact that Taylor was looking more technical than Serrano. And so, or no, that Serrano was looking more technical than Taylor, rather, my bad. And so I think that the appearance of the blood and the gash, I think that played a lot into their overall judgment. And a lot of people were upset about that. There were a lot of complaints about the ruling of that fight and that they felt that Serrano was definitely robbed, but it could be
yeah,
because of the fact that she looked like the loser
yeah.
just visually
Mhm.
in that matchup. So
Now, earlier there was a
unfortunate.
fight with
Yeah.
two guys. I don't remember their names. They were just undercard. One guy was the Aztec guy. He came in with all the pomp and circumstance, and of course he
Oh
lost.
yeah.
He got knocked down a couple times. But both of those guys are all
Right.
bloody, you know. But is there
Yeah.
a difference though in seeing a woman, even though it is 2024 and women's sports is a thing, and women's contact sports like MMA and boxing is definitely a thing, but not many people may not have seen two great boxers like Taylor and Serrano fight. Do you think for people at home, how does that affect the way they perceive the sport? Does it seem more brutal when a woman
Yeah,
has
I
a
think
big
that when it comes
gash in
to
the head,
sports
or
in general, we have to think about just the reason why people tune in. So with that fight, especially, you had people who tuned in to see one of the great boxing all-time heaviest hitters in the game and a guy who has matched up against boxers, but is more of a YouTube creator. They wanted to see who was going to get knocked out, who was going to deliver that knockout blow. That is seriously why people tuned in. They wanted to see either Jake Paul get knocked out. Less people wanted to see Mike Tyson get knocked out, but there were people betting on it. When it comes to women sparring and women boxing, I think there's a spectacle involved in that, but I don't think it's going to hold the same weight as two dudes fighting, right? Where you know that you could potentially die. We've seen people die in boxing, or at least the aftermath. So, Ray Boom Boom Mancini back in the day was my first experience with death and fatality from boxing. I don't think you're going to get that same type of urgency or severity from women's boxing. But again, it's a different market. And I think women will always add to a fight card. I just don't know if it'll amount to the same amount of attention, enthusiasm, and maybe concern that you would get from two guys boxing.
all right? Well, Colin, I think that's
All right. So we're going to wrap it up here on Fresh and Unfiltered. We'll catch you next time, our next broadcast. Thanks for tuning in. And until then, be safe, stay curious.